Hello Neverwinter, this is Merilo. This is the MGR tank tutorial guide, long awaited. The footage I'm using here is the original footage that I took whilst we were farming MGR during mod 25. We were one of the first groups to actually complete. We were certainly the first group to begin a regular farm, and we did actually develop a lot of the strategies that many of the people on the PlayStation at least are using to this day. I'm in the off tank position and I will try to explain both tank roles as we go, and a big thank you to obviously Dreadnoks and Vikings. And I would just like to say that if you like the video, please leave a like. If you like a lot of my videos, then please subscribe. I do have some old build videos that I used at the time, and also some newer updated builds. MGR has become kind of trivial for a tank with the new gear that we've got, but those are available if you want to check them out. The main tank goes and picks up the Minotaur aggro and maintains it whilst the DPS do an artifact call. Then moves the Minotaur down towards the door. The door is the best place for the tank to run with the Minotaur because none of the mobs spawn across the actual door barrier. All three mini bosses will always spawn in the same positions, but they will not always spawn in the same order. Your job as the off tank is to move fast enough to run between the mobs and the mini bosses and the DPS, and then run through the line of sight to pick up the initial line of sight aggro. And obviously you have to do all of this whilst dodging mirrors and maintaining aggro. It's a good idea to advise your DPS not to hit those mobs before you've had the chance to pick them up. You might see me running in circles quite a lot. That's because at the time I was using the threat ring for the off tank, which is a very good idea. This is the most dangerous boss, this rust monster, because he can come up underneath people, teleport and disable them. The second most dangerous is the displacer beast, and the least dangerous boss is the Ettercap, but those spiders with the webs can cause a lot of problems if mirrors pop whilst you're slowed down and stuck. First phase is just basically a rinse and repeat of this. Obviously watch out for your own purples, watch out for your blues. You are the tank, so it is generally on the DPS to avoid you, but you also need to be aware of where the DPS are, especially if there's melee in the group, because you've got a lot more survivability than they do, and most of them are crazy DPS monsters and they won't necessarily be paying attention to the mechanics. You've got much more ability to do that there. For the fighter on this run, I have not got KV equipped already, so you're going to have to be prepared very quickly to switch to KV if you are a fighter. It's less of an issue for barbs, less of an issue for parries, but you do need to be aware of it if you're a fighter. KV is very much recommended because you will be the tank taking the first aggro when Gzemnids spawns, and if you don't take that aggro, the first thing he's going to do is kill your bard. Or another healer, but most likely your bard. You might notice that I switched to Anvil there. That's because in phase 3, yeah, it wasn't actually necessary for phase 2, but in phase 3 there is an issue where you definitely don't want to have two tanks with AoE taunts, just in case one of you does lose aggro. They're going to be so close together that if you're both using AoE taunts, none of you will be able to get it. Split up, you won't be able to split the bosses back up, basically. I did determine afterwards that whoever's doing the big boss, it's okay for that person to run the AoE taunt. and once you get really proficient at it, you won't lose the aggro anyway, but you know, it's a good idea just to be prepared. So we run in, we pick up the aggro quickly, because like I say, he will kill a healer if you're not careful. As the fighter, we are running KV. We need a DPS to come into the KV. I mean, it is very possible to hold this aggro without the KV. It's just so much easier with the KV. Okay. So we are just waiting now for the main tank to come up after the obliteration wave, and then we swap at that point. The general swap cycle is every 2 mechanics. You don't need to worry too much about the stacks, they don't do that much damage, but if you can get into that rhythm of switching on every 2nd mechanic, when the mechanic's finished, then you can get into a good system for the rest of it. If you can get into the rhythm at this point, it makes the actual tough bit in phase 5 a lot easier. So the off tank generally goes in and puts up their mitigation for that blast. I do have a mechanics video which has got the call outs in it as well. I won't be going through all the call out mechanics, this is very much just a tank specific vid, so go check out the other one if you want to know more about what else is going on. The tank who is first away from Gzemnid is the one who gets that obliteration wave. Make sure to pick the correct gem. Again, I've got that in another video that explains mechanics further. Go check that one out if you don't know which gems you should be picking up. And now we get to the fun bit. Phase 3, I am going to record these back to back. I'll put separators in for each of them, so if you're looking for a specific one, just look at the timeline of the video, find the right placeholder and go check that one out. We begin with Storvold and Valindra. Notice that we have the main tank on Valindra holding them at the rune, and the off tank drags Storvold over into a sort of side position. This does enable the off tank to be able to cover the rune to the left if necessary. The way we strategize this was that all 3 healers would go to a rune and one tank would potentially cover the other rune if the healer happens to get a hyper. There is a tank share mechanic during the ice, or sometimes not if it goes out of sequence, but that just means that the main tank needs to group up with the off tank and share that damage. It's less of an issue these days, we take much less damage. We are the off tank and we are doing big bosses, so what we do is we run up to Storvold, do a shield throw, any sort of range pull. We make sure that the DPS are not attacking Storvold because we do not want him to run off on his own. The DPS should be holding their encounter powers until the first set of ice. If you're a fighter, it is worthwhile popping KV straight away and cancelling maybe halfway through just to build up a bit of aggro, and then it will give KV the opportunity to regenerate before we get into the artifact call, which should happen after the DPS have gone through the ice phase. This thing is occasionally buggy as hell and the ice will go completely out of sequence with everything else that's going on. It seems less bad these days, but just be aware of it. When tanking Storvold specifically, we need to keep him pointed away from the rest of the group, the DPS and the other tank, because his big slam that he does is a massive AoE attack. Sometimes you'll get a DPS running up behind you to drop a red. Can't really do much about that, just maybe try and turn Storvold slightly away. And if you check out the mechanics video, you'll know that the primary objective is to kill Storvold first. Killing Storvold will cancel any ice mechanics that are up and make killing Valindra a lot easier. Once Storvold is dead, you can go in and start sharing any mechanics that pop up with Valindra, like the high bone, whatever. Don't use your shield throw or your KV if you are a fighter tank just before you phase, because you need those up straight away when we go into phase 4. Hala, arguably the most difficult of the phase 3 variants. As soon as you go in, you need to pick up Hala's aggro. Again, we are big boss off tank. You need to make sure that your DPS don't snatch the aggro. If they snatch the aggro when he does a blast, then the entire group's getting pushed right off the side. You gotta be very careful with KV here. If Hala hits you whilst KV is up and there's a DPS standing right next to you, you're probably gonna die, and then it's gonna cause some issues. When ice pops, you need to rotate into a preferable position, and you've got to be very careful because you're not necessarily going to be covered and safe from Halaster's blast with his ice. Sometimes you die. It's a risk you gotta take with this dragon. Obviously, once it phases, you look around, look for Halaster, get into the correct position. Again, I've got a mechanics video that explains this one. You're not immune from getting the dragon on you as a tank, so it is worthwhile looking, wiggling. Just find where the right position should be and go there, and then you don't need to worry about whether or not you've got red. Basically, just try not to go too far because the dragon has a massive hitbox and he can block you from getting back round to the safe side in time. We generally tank this the same way we would in Crown, except obviously it's a bit tighter. You slowly walk the dragon out, being careful not to be too far away so that he can't blast you off. The idea is to hold him very tight on the edge so that neither his front blast or his tail swipe is going to knock off any DPS. And it's just a constant fight for aggro. Obviously there's some soul mechanics going on. We can generally just shield up through them and be fine. These days we usually make sure to kill Halaster first if we can, just because he has a tendency, or he has in the past had a tendency to bug out and completely disappear. And we just carry on going until he's dead, making sure to keep him pointed away from the DPS. Nice and easy. Zariel and the Atropal baby. This one seems to be quite the sticking point for some groups. It does involve not only Zariel's mechanics from Master Zariel, but the push-pull mechanic from Cradle of the Death God, which seems to really take a lot of people by surprise. So I don't know if maybe some people need to refresh their mind on that particular mechanic before coming in here. Whoever's on small bosses goes and picks up Zariel. We are on big boss, so we've got Atropal. The aggro gets really, or can get really messed up here, especially if the other tank is using AoE taunts, so that's why I said in the beginning at least one tank should be on a single taunt. Personally, I usually pop KV straight away and then sometimes cancel it halfway through so it regenerates in time for the artifact call. This boss has the tank switch mechanic from Zariel, so after the first hypo you're going to need to swap, otherwise Zariel will kill whoever's got the aggro, usually the tank, hopefully the tank, and the next tank switch comes shortly after the runes explosion, and then I think the next one comes after hypo again, but we rarely stay in here long enough to get hit with a third tank swap, so I'm not entirely sure, and it's been a while. The baby has a big damage suppose you could call it an AoE, but he slams his arm down on the platform and drags it all the way through the group. Ideally, you need to have the baby turned to such a position that that arm swipe avoids the entire group. It can be very difficult to do, especially if the other tank is using an AoE taunt, and sometimes the baby simply won't move. Usually if you're an MGR you're going to be doing enough damage that won't matter, but if not, it's going to be like some very heavy mitigation that you'll have to put down. Demo tier. This is actually probably the easiest one to do, provided you've got some Black Death Scorpions. Tiamat does have an excessive amount of HP though, although it is kind of balanced out by the fact that Demo has a lot less HP. We don't actually need to have a tank on tier for this. We're mainly going to be concentrating on aggro switching with Demo. He's a bit more aggressive than in actual Master Demogorgon. You can't take as many stacks in here as you could in there. And we have the additional issue of getting applied with the gem effects from Tiamat without any gems to cancel the effects. So you're going to have to be careful, watch out for the white and the blue in particular. The black and the red aren't quite as bad, especially not on a fighter, because you can just shield through those. It can get a bit dicey if you've got a lot of stacks and demos on you. One strategy you can use from this is to kind of kite Demo across the back half, and then you can just stay out of his range basically. Although he will strangle you if you get too far. It's not an instant kill like it is in Demogorgon in the actual trial. And kiting him around does seem to reduce the amount of effects he actually does, so that can be quite useful. Our general strategy for this is to have one DPS on Demo and the rest on tier. That's how much of a health difference they have. As a fighter, as the off tank here, doing big bosses, I would usually go up and KV that one DPS who was on Demo just to suck any aggro off them. I don't know how you do that on the other tank classes. You probably just, be aware that that DPS might snatch the aggro and be prepared to react. It's quite important when tanking Demo here not to run him too far around the circle and into the DPS group. Ideally you want to be stopping at either portal side as you're running across the back. And obviously try to avoid pointing any of his blasts towards the DPS. You want to be prepared to swap if the other tank gets a blue or a red or a black, depending on how proficient the other tank is with handling those and how many stacks they have. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where both the tanks get a blue, so I don't think that's something you need to worry about. But you can get one tank with a white and then shortly afterwards the blue goes on another tank, so you've got to be aware of your stacks and aware of the other tank's stacks. And of course make sure to kill your paranoid delusions when they're up, because they are still a pain in the arse, just like they are in Demo. You can dodge absolutely all of the area of effects that Demo puts on. You don't just stand in those and take them, there's no need to. That applies in the actual Demo trial as well. You don't need to get all those stacks on you. You can actually dodge a lot of the mechanics. If you find yourself at a bit of a loose end as a tank and there's a blue up, you can actually go in and help share that damage with the DPS. I'm sure the healers will be grateful. And if the blue's on the other tank and they're having a hard time, you can also go and help them out with that. It's, find some work for yourself. And like with any phasing in this dungeon, you want to make sure that you've got KV up and a hard taunt up, at least when you're phasing in. Phase 4, this is the rotating beholders phase. The strategy for this has actually changed slightly than what you'll see in the video. Now we have determined that the tank should take the aggro of the beholder to the right before going to the left. and this is because the beholder on the right will instantly kill usually a bard. Again, bards really get it in this dungeon. The bards, or at least one of the healer, will instantly pull aggro from that one to the right. So if the tanks pick it up, save the healer's life, right? So we grab the aggro to the right, then we go to the left. Hopefully, if you've been phasing correctly, artifacts will be up, so we go artifacts on the first one. If you're a fighter, obviously pop your KV, get one of your DPS in the KV. The worst thing the DPS can do at this point is pull aggro, because you are rotating, and the tanks will have a very hard time getting the aggro back if they happen to snatch it as you rotate. The first one will usually be taken down in the artifact call, and then it's a quick rotate to the second one. Obviously just try and maintain the aggro. Sometimes your DPS are going to, they'll have a daily saved up left over that they'll throw on there, so just be ready and aware that you might want to snatch that back straight away. Phase 5 is very similar to Phase 2 mechanics wise, but there's a few extra interesting things that you got to watch out for. So the initial thing is to position yourself to the top of the map so that you're opposite the door and the DPS are on the other side. It will usually be a hand slam as the first mechanic that's coming, but occasionally if you phase right on the cusp of a mechanic in Phase 2, that mechanic will get pushed through to this phase, which can be very awkward, but you know, something to watch out for. I will generally insist on taking the aggro here as the off tank, but you know, just sort it out between yourself and the other tank who's going to take it. Obviously if someone has died in Phase 4, then the aggro is going to be on the other person anyway. If you both died, then you're going to have to snatch the aggro back before he starts on at the DPS. Whoever does not have the main aggro when the double obliteration waves start needs to get distance between himself and the other tank. This is because those obli waves do equal damage, and if they are right next to each other, the DPS will not have time to recover their HP before they get hit by the second one and potentially get wiped. So we maintain the rule of 2 here generally with the mechanics. It can be a good idea to switch directly after the hand slam, just because of the way the phases work, but all of this is building up to getting into the rhythm that you need for when it gets to the big grid mirror thing and the double hypo, which we'll see coming up. After the obliteration wave, we move over to the hypo spot. Now this is where we determined that the hypo spot should be. Your group may determine that it's somewhere else, but the whole idea of it is to take the boss over to where the DPS are going to be and take them out of the path of most of the jellies. This is just to make it easier on yourself, the DPS, everyone really, because then they won't get caught up in a random jelly and the path of the jellies is more predictable. Plus the melee will have an easier time hitting the boss. Whoever doesn't have aggro can go in with the hypo just to help out the DPS, but be careful if you've got any effects on you like a purple or a blue. You don't want to be damaging the DPS at that point. When a mitigation blast comes up, whoever does not have the aggro puts up whatever mitigation they've got. Obviously for the fighter it is phalanx, and then you switch after the mitigation. The other tank goes off and does whatever they can to help break those jellies. And the important switch starts coming up once the gems have popped. So if it's safe to do so, the other tank will go in to help with the hypo. It's important to get this switch right, especially if purple is up. So the tank without the aggro goes and picks up the aggro and then runs to the farthest gem generally. The reason for this is so that they are far enough away from the beholder that they don't get direct damage from it, and they don't have any stacks on them eating into their stamina. If one tank holds that entire aggro session, through the mirrors, then they can quite often get killed by the obliteration wave. And if purple's up, then they're dead, and you know they're out. A way around that is if you're a fighter tank, you can pop determination or something, but it's hit and miss whether or not your daily's going to be up at that point, so that's the important mechanic for that one. Yeah, these earlier runs were quite chaotic. It's got a bit more relaxed since then. Phase 6 is very similar to Phase 4, except you've got the additional fun of the low fire line. You can shield up through it, but it will damage you. Jumping is generally not a good idea, because if you've got KV up or if you get hit by a line in the air, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, but you just got to do what you can, really. Tanking wise, the idea is to have only 2 beholders aggroed on you if possible, so you take the one to the right, the one to the left initially, and then as you rotate you take the next beholder, and then if everything's working correctly, those 2 holders should be stuck on you as you go through. Obviously if one tank dies, you're gonna have to start picking up more aggro. I mean, if you're a fighter, you'd pop determination and then hold on as long as you can. I'm not entirely sure what the other tank classes would do. Here we go, Phase 7. The first time Dreadnox's guild group got here was a few weeks before anyone on PlayStation had completed. We got down to about 0.5%, and it was incredibly demoralising that we got completely wiped. But here we are. Ideally, we position ourselves as we did before, with the tanks at the top, the DPS on the other side, but the most important thing is that the DPS are not on the tanks. If you do get a double obli here, you just need to spread out as far as you can and hope for the best. But obviously the tank with the aggro still stays on the boss. You might get mechanics pushed through from the previous round 5, which we did there, that double obli, so that means we're going to get 2 double oblis on this one. And you just gotta, if you're a fighter, you keep spamming Enforced Threat for that debuff, that sweet debuff. And you just keep going and going. When the mitigation comes, you go in and mitigate. If a double hypo pops, whoever doesn't have the aggro goes in to help out. When this mirror pops, there's actually a spot you can stand as a tank, which I haven't done here, but there is a very tight little corner you can sit in to be safe. And then you just, like that, you just win. So, thanks for watching everybody. If you got all the way to the end, then do please like, do please subscribe. If you've got any ideas for anything else that you want me to break down like this, then pop them in the comments. And thanks again for watching.